So then we get down to the actual grading of writing. How many of you guys have already had experience grading? How is it? Boo. Boo. Is it? What kinds of things don't you like about grading? Definitely time consuming. Yep, I have a little time-saving strategies on the list. What else don't we like about grading? Yeah.
I find with writing assignments, it's hard to separate those different aspects of a paper because sometimes they seem so related.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Definitely. And what is an 82 versus an 84 in a writing assignment? That's tough, right?
I found I can read it. This feels like a B minus.
Right.
But I have trouble kind of applying that to the whole class because I think, this student I know is English major, she's very good at writing, and this student I know he's a business, he doesn't do this very often. So I want to kind of grade and say, well, almost on a scale, for I know what his skill is, he should get a bump. She didn't apply herself here, she should get a bump down. But you can't do that, so I have trouble figuring out how to apply to each individual student.
So true, especially if that's, at the end of the night, you're exhausted, you've given the exact same feedback 100 times before, and now when that student is doing it, it ticks you off when it didn't at the beginning. Has anyone experienced that? I know I have a lot. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to talk about some of those things. The first thing that I want to talk about is making sure that your expectations are explicit and that your assessment aligns with those expectations. I am a huge fan about having an assignment sheet and a rubric or some kind of a grading aid that directly correlates with that writing assignment. So if you say that you just want to find out, for instance, if students understand global warming. Okay, that's what your assignment is, but then all you grade them on is their writing ability, there's a disconnect, right? If you say that you care about critical thinking, that or you care about focus and organization and support, you agree that those are major parts of what your assignment is. That's how your classroom is structured. And then all of your comments or the grading comes from just grammar got under your skin. And that happens especially after 50 essays, right? Then there's a disconnect. And so what I'd like to argue is that you just make it clear to students how they're going to be graded, and those should align with whatever your goals in class are. And that's not to say that you can't grade partially on grammar. That's fine. The presentation of a text, a final product, that's okay, I think. But I think that we should be really clear about how important that is, if that's 10% of their grade or 50% of the grade, and that it is somehow expressed in that assignment sheet that that's something that you value. I think that's just kind of fair for students. I am a rubric gal, all right? So I'm just putting that out there. I know there's lots and lots and lots of back and forth about whether or not rubrics stifle writers, if they are fair and useful. I like them. And the reason why I like them, or some kind of grading tool, is that fairness, right? That you no longer have to say this kind of feels like an 82 and then you justify the 82 with your comments at the end of the page. Or that you get hung up on a grammar-related or just not even grammar, sentence-level stuff. There's fragments and comma splices throughout, and it made it difficult to read, right? And so there will be a spot in your rubric that is dedicated to that. They could get a very, very low score on that, but their ideas are there. Their organization is correct, right, or is effective on that sheet. So if you want to get a sample rubric, I have lots of them actually that I've used. Some that are really elaborate, that really breaks down what in my class a 3 on support looks like, what a 5, what an 8, what a 10. I have it just laid out, and I spent a lot of time creating that, versus just a 10 on support looks like this, and then they get a score, 1 out of 10, of how well they met that expectation. So I have some examples if you're interested. I think that having 4 categories is probably ideal on a rubric. I think if you try to do 10 or 12 things that you're looking for, that might really overwhelm a student, that they have to pay attention to all of those things. And let's be honest, in a lot of our assignments, especially like daily assignments or not the major research papers, you're not interested in 12 different things. You're interested, did they understand the topic? Is it a kind of readable paper? Was it an effective summary and response or something like that? So I say that 4 is ideal. I didn't get that out of any text. That's just from my own experience and doing a lot of grading. So I say that maybe an example would be that 40% of the student's grade is based on X. And that could be content, just understanding the content and showing an understanding of the content. This doesn't have to be 40% is on focus, 30% is organization. It doesn't have to be directly related to this hierarchy, because that's just about writing. You might also have specific things in your content area that you are testing on in their essay, and so that's just fine. Maybe 40% of the student's grade is based on that, 30% on something else, 20% on this, and 10% on grammar and mechanics. Or maybe you care a lot about grammar and mechanics and you want to boost that. That's fine. I'd say that's fair as long as you let your students know. And what I think this also does is show you what your values are. When you go into grading a piece of writing, what are you looking for? And be really honest with yourself, right? That you really care about X, Y, and Z. And that's just fine. And so I'd say just let your students know that. I also say to make sure that students know what your markings mean. How many of you have had experiences where a professor has put a check mark in the middle of your paragraph or underlined something? Yeah. Do you know what that means? I never did. It's like they underlined the sentence and I would reread it at home like, is this a good sentence? Did they like this sentence or is something wrong with this sentence, right? So I just say to have some kind of basic key. There are like proofreading symbols out there where a little curly Q means this, 3 underlines mean capital. You know, you can use those. But I think what's especially useful is if you underline something, a check mark. I had a teacher that put a G off to the side. I learned at the end of the semester that means good. Wouldn't have that been great to know early in the semester that G is good? And then as you are thinking about the types of comments, those underlining, the check marks, the marginalia, those comments in the margins are at the end, I'd like for you to keep in mind what the purpose is of writing something. Okay, is it grade justification? Is it giving them ideas for revision? And that's key, I think. I think that's a major point here is if they are going to revise the paper and resubmit it, those comments are probably, hopefully, they're going to look different than if you're just grading it, giving them a grade, and they're done with the paper and they're never going to look at it again. So are you even accepting revisions? And that the students, again, know what they mean. And I guess I'm coming from a place as a former student, of course, but also as a writing center person who sees student papers all the time, who want to know, hey, my teacher wrote all this, what does this mean? And sometimes we can figure it out. CS usually means comma splice. You know, we can figure that out. But again, a G on the side, I wouldn't know what that meant.